Are you looking for a fun new way to use your layering stencils? Hi there, it's Therese from Lostinpaper, and I've got this beautiful Impressionist bouquet coordinating die and layering stencil set, and it is a kind of a watercolor look flower, and I wanted to change it up today and just give you a new idea on how to get more out of your stencils. So like I said, these are layering stencils, and they actually have a little impression. It's hard to see here because I haven't used them before, so there's no ink in the grooves, but there is actually a really faint outline showing you how to line up these stencils and make sure that you have your images in the correct place. It's really not going to matter too much today because I'm going to do it a little bit differently. What I'm doing here is creating a watercolor background for the base layer of the stencil rather than using the actual stencil itself. You'll see what I mean as we are progressing along. So I've got some of the watercolor paper here from Altenew and the woodless watercolor pencils, and I'm basically just scribbling my colors over top of the paper, mixing them a little bit. I am actually using the dies here to work out exactly the shape or the size of the flowers to make sure that I've covered enough of the area on the cardstock. So these colors do mix quite well together, and what I did was did my base layer of color with the pencil and wet that, and then I can just, to add a bit more color and depth, I actually use the tip to tip technique. So a wet brush touching the tip of the pencil, picking up some color and then adding that down. If I wanted to add more colors on top of this, and you'll see this a little bit later on, by drawing on the paper itself, I do need to make sure that the watercolor paper is dry before I come back on and actually draw on the cardstock. So I do want this to be completely dry before I add my next layer of the stencil, and basically this is going to be my very first base layer of color, and it's just going to give that extra bit of texture to the flower, and it's going to be very unique because every watercolor wash background looks different. I would recommend not getting too heavy-handed on that base layer because you do want to see your stenciled areas. So I lined up the stencils, making sure that I had enough coverage. So because I had those little outlines on the actual layers of the stencils, I could see where the top layer was going to be. So when I placed my layering stencil on top, I made sure when I do the die cutting in a minute that I was going to have enough base coverage there. So this set gives me a couple of layers of flower shadows and also the centerpieces as well. And I just chose some coordinating inks and used the Altenew blending brushes to add those layers. This is really forgiving. You could do this with a lot of the different layering flower sets, and this one in particular, because it's got that watercolor finish look anyway, it wouldn't really matter. You could actually use your base layer of design paper, like something that's already printed, and do this. You don't have to create your own background. I just thought it would be fun to use these pretty colors from Altenew from the pencils. It's one of my go-to color sets. The center of the flowers, I did make them yellow. I hesitated though. I was thinking brown, black or yellow, and I went with yellow. I just find it's nice and bright, makes me happy. And then it's just a matter of coming along with the coordinating dies and running them through my die cutting machine. I did hold them in place with some low-tack tape here because this is watercolor cardstock and it has warped a little bit. Running it through the die cutting machine is going to help flatten that out, but I didn't want the dies to shift while I was doing that. So it looks very different to if I had just added the base colour as one. I did the same thing again, but this time I did it for this die cut leaf, and this is the polka dot leaves die set. It's actually a layering leaf set, but I'm only using the base layer. I'm not using the polka dot portion, and it's quite a large die, and I love that about it because I can simply come along and cut pieces off and use the portions that I want. I knew this was going to have little bits of white cardstock showing. I wanted that, but I did need some depth to put behind my blue flowers, and I think that's really pretty. I die cut a panel from the mix and match frames set and popped that up actually on 2 layers of foam. So this is actually sitting quite high off the card. This is not a card for the faint-hearted. If you don't like layers, you could easily adhere this directly to the card front, but I love dimension and all these different layers. I used a liquid glue to attach the leaves. Because it's watercolor cardstock, I don't like to take chances. And I could just snip away the bits of leaf that I didn't want. I can move them around to make them be where I want behind my bouquet. I just had such a ball making this card, and it came together really quickly. I did add a heat embossed sentiment from Ornamental Bliss as well. So if you want any more information about this card, all the links and everything will be in the description below. They'll also be at my blog, and that will also be linked below. Come visit me at my blog. I'd love to see you there. If you did like today's video, please click on the thumbs up video to let me know that you did, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll be back again real soon. Till next time, happy paper crafting. Bye.